Welcome to Nightmares and Grief, a place to explore and celebrate the darkness. Each episode, I'll read stories written by me, Derrick Heisey. So settle in, check under the bed, and pour a drink for the skeletons in your closet. It's time to start. The sound of baying hounds. June 6th, 2024. I found Tyler Philmont's hat today. While patrolling Mirror Lake, I saw something drift across the still waters. I hate littering, it's disrespectful, and I got a bug up my ass to take the kayak out and retrieve it. I knew it was his. Red with the Bucky's beaver embroidered on the front. You don't see Bucky Beaver this far west. Not unless he's on the hat of a missing Texan boy. When I transferred to Whispering Pines 3 weeks ago, I thought the isolation would be good for me. After my divorce, I needed space, needed quiet. Eagle Ridge is the most remote outpost in the park system, nestled deep in the mountains where cell reception becomes a distant memory about 10 miles back. I don't mind. The quiet suits me. Or, at least it did. In the quiet, I've been thinking about Tyler's hat. There was paperwork to do. Mother wouldn't stop crying. The father stood there, still but shaken, his eyes vacant and lost like his mind forced him to watch his little boy drown. I had a few drinks and sat down to write this. I don't know where it's going. I don't know if I'll write again after today. But it's been a hard day. Tonight, the silence that's supposed to be comforting feels wrong. I've been a park ranger for 11 years. I know the sounds of the forest at night. The rustle of nocturnal creatures, the whisper of the wind through pine needles, the distant howl. But tonight, those familiar sounds have been replaced by something else. Something that doesn't belong. It started during my evening patrol. Standard procedure: check the perimeter of Sector 3, make sure no campers had wandered off the designated areas, and ensure the fire pits were extinguished. Nothing I haven't done 1,000 times before. The Bennett family at Campsite 14 asked about strange noises they'd heard the night before. Raccoons, I told them. Maybe a fox. They nodded, relieved by the simple explanation, though the father didn't seem convinced. Their dog, a golden retriever with an American flag bandana, wouldn't leave the campsite, not even to chase the squirrels that darted between the trees. Smart animal. I should have paid attention. On my way back to the station, I took the trail that winds along Hollow Creek. The moonlight spilled across the water's surface, transforming it into a ribbon of quicksilver cutting through the darkness. That's when I saw the tracks. At first, I thought they were human. Some camper who'd ignored the no swimming signs, but as I crouched to examine them, I realized they were wrong. Too elongated for a person. The heel impression deeper than it should be. The toe marks splayed and tapered into what looked like, though this sounds ridiculous even as I write it, claws. Not animal tracks either. Not bear or coyote or anything cataloged in my ranger training. My hand trembled as I took photos, the flashlight beam jerking across the impressions. Something primal in my brainstem recognized these tracks before my conscious mind could process what I was seeing. I backed away 3 steps before forcing myself to stay professional. And that's when I heard it. The sound came from across the creek, deep within the thicket of pines that grew so dense their branches interlocked like gnarled fingers, a scraping noise like blades against slate. I called out, my voice thin in the vastness. "Park ranger, identify yourself." The scraping stopped. For 3 heartbeats, it was nothing. Just the gentle babble of the creek and my own breath, shallow and quick. Then it came again. I swept my flashlight across the tree line, the beam cutting through the darkness, but revealing nothing but shadows and more shadows. Yet I knew I was being watched. I could feel it, a prickling sensation that started at the base of my skull and traveled down my spine like ice water. "Hello?" I called again, my hand moving to the sidearm at my hip. "This area is closed after dark." I heard footsteps to my left. No, my right. Behind me? Something circled me. I chased the sound with my flashlight beam, slashing through the darkness, revealing nothing but trees and shadows and more trees. My light caught something pale among the pines for just a second. A thin, emaciated figure with limbs too long for its body, crouched low to the ground. The air temperature plummeted in that instant, my breath visible in front of me. A smell hit me then, not decay, but something older, mineral, ancient, like the musty stink of a crypt breached after centuries of stillness. Then it was gone. I'm not ashamed to admit I ran. 11 years on the job and I ran like a rookie. By the time I reached my truck, my lungs burned and sweat plastered my uniform to my back despite the cool night air. The drive back to the station passed in a blur. I kept checking my rearview mirror, convinced I'd see that pale figure loping along behind me, gaining ground with each impossible stride. Ranger Dawson was still up when I arrived, nursing a mug of coffee at the dispatch desk. He'd been at Whispering Pines longer than anyone, 26 years and counting. The man's face is weathered as the mountains themselves, carved by time and the elements into deep crevices. His eyes, though, they're sharp, observant. He looked up when I burst through the door, taking in my disheveled appearance with a raised eyebrow. "Creek's haunted," I blurted out, regretting my choice of words. Dawson's mouth twitched. "That's so." I showed him the photos of the tracks, explained what I'd heard, what I'd thought I'd seen. As I spoke, his expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Concern? By the time I finished, his coffee had gone cold. "Probably a bear with a deformed paw," he said, handing back my phone. "Had one like that back in 07. Left tracks that looked human." It was a reasonable explanation, the logical conclusion, but it didn't explain the scraping sound. Dawson's face closed like a shutter dropping, but his fingers tapped against his mug. "Wouldn't plays tricks out here. he said, eyes darting to the window as though checking for eavesdroppers. Gets into the hollow trees, makes all sorts of sounds. You'll get used to it. The lie hung between us like a pendulum. He stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. Get some rest, Cooper. Tomorrow's the weekend rush. Campers coming from the city. We'll need you sharp. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As Dawson headed to his quarters, he paused at the door. Without turning, he said, Stick to the main trails for the next few days. And Cooper, don't go to Hollow Creek alone. I'm in my cabin now. It's small but serviceable. A bed, a desk, a hot plate for cooking. The window faces east, toward the bulk of the forest and, beyond it, the mountains that give this place its name. The pines outside sway, their shadows dancing across my floor in the moonlight. I've cleaned my sidearm. Twice. The Park Service manual sits open beside me, turned to the section on indigenous wildlife. Nothing in those glossy pages explains what I saw tonight, what I heard. It's 3:17 a.m. I should sleep, but each time I close my eyes, I feel a presence. I just looked up from my desk. For a split second, I thought I saw something at my window. A pale face with hollow eyes, stringy hair hanging like dead vines around gaunt features, but when I blinked, there was nothing there. Just my own reflection, haggard and wide-eyed with fatigue. Just my imagination. It has to be. But still, I've moved my bed away from the window. June 9th, 2024. I can't sleep. I've drank more coffee than ever in my life, and my nerves are so frayed that every shadow twitches at the corner of my vision. I can't tell what's real, and that's worse than the certainty of fear. 3 nights now, I've woken at 3:17 a.m., heart hammering against my ribs, sweat-soaked sheets twisted around my legs. Each time, the sensation is the same. A terrible weight on my chest, as if some malevolent presence sits there, watching me struggle for breath. Each time, I lie paralyzed, eyes locked on the ceiling, unwilling to turn my head toward the window, unwilling to see what might look back. I haven't felt this kind of fear since I was a child. The kind that makes you pull the blankets over your head even though you know fabric won't stop the monsters. The kind that turns your limbs to lead and fills your throat with cotton. The kind that turns a grown man to a trembling shell. It feels childish, humiliating. I've faced aggressive bears and armed poachers without flinching. I've conducted search and rescue operations in blizzards, but now I lie awake each night afraid to look at my own window. Today I decided to go back to Hollow Creek. I told myself it was procedural, to document the tracks in daylight, to see if campers had reported additional disturbances. Dawson caught me checking out the trail maintenance kit. Headed somewhere? He asked, voice neutral. The bags under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept well either. Just routine patrol, I lied. Thought I'd clear some debris from the western trails. His eyes held mine for a beat too long. Take your radio. Keep it on. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and something else. Something metallic, like old pennies or fresh-turned soil. The forest felt different in daylight, less threatening yet more watchful. The sunlight filtering through the canopy created dappled patterns that shifted and swayed, making it difficult to tell if the shadows moved or if it was a trick of the light. I found the tracks again. They hadn't washed away as they should have after last night's rain. If anything, they were deeper, more defined. I followed them upstream, away from the main trail. The impression of claws at the toes became more pronounced with each print, the stride length longer, as if whatever made them had abandoned any pretense of humanity as it moved deeper into the forest. That's when I found the first rabbit. Its tiny body had been torn apart, limbs scattered in a precise circle, the head placed in the center. Not eaten, displayed. Blood spattered the surrounding pine needles in a pattern too deliberate to be natural, like grotesque artwork. The blood was still wet, glistening in the dappled sunlight. 10 feet farther, another rabbit. Same pattern. Then a squirrel. Then what looked like a fox. All fresh kills, all dismembered with the same savage efficiency, creating a macabre trail deeper into the woods. The tracks changed too. No longer careful impressions in the soft earth, but frenzied, chaotic gouges, like whatever made them had dropped any pretense of stealth and started running, excited, dragging those claws through the dirt as it moved. In some places, the forest floor was torn up like a plow had cut through it, pine needles scattered in frantic arcs. I should have turned back. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but something pulled me forward, a compulsion I couldn't resist. The same morbid curiosity that makes you peer into dark corners when you're alone at night. The tracks led to a small clearing in the dense pines. There, they vanished, as if whatever made them had evaporated into the air, or risen up. I scanned the branches above, dreading to see that pale figure perched among them, watching me with those hollow eyes. Nothing. Just the sway of pine boughs in the breeze. That's when I noticed the claw marks. They ran up the trunk of an ancient pine at the edge of the clearing, long, deep gouges in the bark, higher than a bear could reach standing on its hind legs. 4 parallel lines, jagged and uneven. Chunks of bark had been ripped away, scattered at the base of the tree like discarded garbage. Fresh sap oozed from the wounds, mixed with something darker. Something that looked like blood. Was it from the animals? Or was it from something else? I reached out to touch one of the grooves, tracing the raw, splintered wood. A chill ran down my spine. I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood. I turned. Nothing. Just trees and shadows and more trees. Yet, the feeling persisted. So strong I could taste it. The bitter copper of fear coating my tongue. On my way back, I stopped at Mirror Lake. It's a small, round body of water, like a coin tossed onto the forest floor. The surface was glass smooth in the afternoon light, reflecting the surrounding pines and the cloud-dotted sky above. I crouched at the edge, splashing cold water on my face, trying to wash away the lingering horror of what I'd seen. I looked out across the water and thought of Tyler Philmont. Thought about the grief that pulled the father into himself, and how it reminded me of how the fear from the other night pulled me into myself too. In the water's warped reflection, I caught a glimpse of a face, if you could call it that, gaunt and stretched, with dark hollows where the eye should be. Its skin shimmered like it was slick with some translucent film. When I whipped around, it was gone. But a wet, musky stink lingered in the air, like wet dog mixed with carrion. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scanned the tree line, searching for any sign of movement, any flash of pale skin against the dark pines. Nothing. Just the quiet lapping of tiny waves against the shore and the distant call of a bird. When I returned to the station, Dawson was on the radio with dispatch. A group of campers in Sector 4 had reported strange noises after dark. As Dawson assured them it was wildlife, his eyes met mine across the room. Something passed between us. An understanding, perhaps, or a shared fear. After he hung up, I showed him the new photos. The mutilated animals, the claw marks, the blood. His face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Bears," he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "Maybe wolves. Territory dispute." What kind of wolves finger paint with their kills' body parts? Dawson's eyes hardened. "Then it's poachers, taking trophies." Poachers don't tear animals apart and arrange them in circles. They don't leave the meat behind. He stood, chair scraping against the floor. "What the hell do you want me to say, Cooper? That there's some kind of monster in these woods? That we should shut down the park because you found weird tracks and dead animals?" His reaction felt disproportionate, defensive, as if I'd stumbled onto something he'd been trying to keep buried. "No. I just want to know what we're dealing with." Dawson's shoulders slumped. For a moment, he looked like every one of his 60-plus years. "You're new here. There are things about these mountains that don't make it into the training manuals." Before I could press him further, the radio crackled to life. Another call from Sector 4. More strange noises. A camper reporting their dog wouldn't stop growling at the tree line. Dawson responded, promising to send someone to check it out, but I noticed he didn't volunteer to go himself. After my shift, I went through the maintenance logs stored in the station's ancient filing cabinet. 5 years of incident reports, all categorized and cross-referenced. 7 entries described unusual tracks found through the park, all filed by different rangers. All dismissed or explained away as known wildlife, playing children, or weather distortion. One report from last summer caught my attention. Ranger Mills, who transferred to Yellowstone this past winter, had found a cluster of dead deer near Hollow Creek. The report noted their bodies had been dismembered and displayed in ritualistic patterns. Photos attached to the file showed limbs twisted into impossible positions, antlers driven into the ground like stakes. The images made my stomach turn. Several pages of Mills' report were redacted, with the conclusion visible. an attribution to predator activity, wolfpack behavior. There hadn't been wolves in Whispering Pines for decades. Even more disturbing was a note scribbled in the margin of Mill's report. It came to my cabin last night, scratching, watching. No one believes me. I'm sitting in my cabin now, laptop open to the wildlife database, searching for any creature that could have made those tracks, those claw marks. The search has yielded nothing. I've pulled the blinds closed, though I know that thin fabric won't keep it out if it wants to get in. The wind has picked up, moaning around the eaves of my cabin like a wounded animal. Sometimes, in the gusts, I think I hear sounds that resemble words, but it's just the wind catching the hollow spaces between trees. It's 3:17 a.m. I don't want to sleep. Don't want to wake up paralyzed, feeling that weight on my chest, afraid to look at my window. But exhaustion is winning. My eyes keep drifting closed, my thoughts becoming disjointed, fragmented. Just before I nodded off, I thought I heard scratching at my window. The scratching was slower this time, more deliberate. Not claws against stone, but the sound of nails working into soft wood, gouging it with a patient hunger. Like something savoring the idea of getting in. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to... June 12th, 2024. 3:17 a.m. Like clockwork, my eyes snapped open in the darkness, heart racing, but this time was different. This time, I knew something was in my cabin. The darkness seemed to breathe. It had weight and substance pooling in the corners like tar, thickest in the spaces between my bed and the window. And within that concentrated darkness, something watched me. Every muscle in my body locked tight, not by choice, but by some primal override that recognized a predator my conscious mind couldn't comprehend. I lay paralyzed, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes as my body betrayed me. My sidearm sat on the nightstand 3 feet away, useless as a child's toy. I don't know how long it watched me before I fell back into unconsciousness. When morning light filtered through my window, I found 4 parallel scratches outside of the glass. Precise, deliberate lines that hadn't been there the night before. At the station, Dawson took one look at me and poured coffee without a word. The dark circles under his eyes matched my own. When I started to describe what had happened, he cut me off with a sharp gesture.
"Not here,"
he muttered, eyes flickering to the radio where seasonal staff chatter filled the room. Before I could press him, a call came through from the university research team in Sector 5. Their voices carried the brittle calm of people trying to sound normal. Dr. Chen met us at the edge of a small meadow, her colleagues huddled a distance back. "We found it about an hour ago," she said, her scientific demeanor cracking as she led us forward. "There's no documented precedence for..." She gestured toward the center of the clearing. A perfect circle of dead vegetation stretched 15 feet in diameter, not just dead but desiccated, reduced to ash-gray husks. In its center lay 3 human teeth, with roots still attached, surrounded by soil, gouged by deep marks like territorial scratches. 2 nights ago, Dr. Chen whispered as I collected evidence, something watched me outside my tent. Something pale, with long limbs that moved on all 4s. I gave her the standard explanations. Coyote, mountain lion, erosion, exposing old native burial remains, but the words rang hollow even to my ears. That evening, I returned to my cabin to find my door ajar. Inside, the sheets were dragged to the floor, the pillows bearing impressions as if something had been curled up on them. The musky, wild smell of predator filled the space. On my pillow lay a fresh kill. A squirrel with its belly torn open but untouched. I threw away the sheets and remade the bed with shaking hands, propping a chair under the doorknob and positioning my sidearm within reach. At 3:16 a.m., 1 minute before my regular waking time, I heard it. Not at the window this time. At the door. A wet, dragging rasp, as if something slick and raw was pulling itself along the wood. Not claws, something softer, fleshier. The chair beneath the doorknob trembled. Then came a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the door, the primal sound of a hunter sensing prey. My body betrayed me again, muscles locking as an overwhelming biological response bypassed all my training. Before I could process what was happening, I found myself pulling the blankets over my head like a frightened child, my mind screaming for action while my body refused to obey. It wasn't mere fear, it was something deeper, more fundamental. My brainstem recognized a predator so evolved to hunt humans that it triggered emergency shutdown protocols I didn't know I possessed. By morning, I found 4 deep gouges carved into my door from head height to floor, and on my doorstep, a fresh, decapitated squirrel, its body still warm, its head missing. This has to stop. Tomorrow I'll confront Dawson. He knows more than he's telling. It's here, outside my window, watching me right. I can feel its eyes on me. Don't look up. Don't look up. Don't. June 14th, 2024. I don't remember falling asleep last night. After writing my last entry, after hearing that thing outside my window, my memory goes blank. I woke up this morning on the floor beside my desk, flashlight still clutched in my hand, batteries dead. My bedroom door had light scratches on it, like something sharp had teased the wood. I made a crosshatch pattern in sets of 4 parallel lines. On my doorstep, I found a dead fox. Its body was torn apart but otherwise untouched. No sign of feeding, just killed and left there. Similar to how large predators will make kills they don't eat when they've established a hunting territory. The sight of it made my stomach turn, but there was something else too. A primal recognition that I was being stalked. My muscles ached as I dragged myself to my feet, joints creaking like I'd aged decades overnight. The fatigue has become a constant companion now, a leaden weight that makes every movement an effort. I've been drinking coffee by the pot, but the caffeine doesn't touch the exhaustion. It's bone deep, cellular, like my body is expending all its resources just to stay vigilant, on high alert. The stress of knowing something is hunting me has my system flushed with adrenaline and cortisol with no release. Even when I sleep, I never rest. I confronted Dawson this morning, waited until we were alone in the station, then laid it all out. The tracks, the claw marks, the animal kills, the circle with the teeth, the presence in my cabin. Everything except the paralysis and overwhelming terror. Some things are too difficult to admit, even now. Dawson listened in silence, his weathered face giving nothing away. When I finished, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out a bottle of bourbon and 2 plastic cups. "It's 8 a.m., I said. "You're gonna want this." He poured generous measures into both cups. The bourbon burned going down. Dawson took a long swallow and set his cup down with care. "There's been something in these woods. Long before the park was established. Local communities have stories going back generations. Different regions had different terms for it, but they all knew to stay away from certain parts of the forest at night." He leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. "When I started here, the old-timers warned me. Said there was a predator in these mountains unlike anything in the textbooks. Something that hunts different." "You've seen it?" Dawson nodded. "Once. 20 years ago. I was doing a night patrol near Hollow Creek. Found tracks similar to what you described. Followed them like an idiot." His fingers tightened around his cup. "It was watching me from the pines. Pale. Emaciated. Moving like nothing I've seen, fast but wrong, like its joints bent in directions they shouldn't." I felt a chill run down my spine, remembering the glimpse I'd caught at Mirror Lake. "Why isn't this thing in any of the park records? Why haven't you warned people?" Dawson laughed, a bitter sound without humor. "Warn them about what? A creature no one's documented? You think the Park Service wants that kind of publicity? You think anyone would believe it?" He took another drink. "After what I saw, I filed a report. My supervisor suggested I take time off for stress. When I came back, the report was gone. Like it never existed." "So the Park Service knows?" "They know something's out there. They've been burying reports for decades, reclassifying disappearances as hiking accidents, animal attacks as poaching incidents." Dawson refilled his cup. "Every few years, it gets more active, more aggressive. Then it goes quiet again, like it's hibernating. It's been quiet for a while now, until you arrived." The implication hung in the air between us. I drained my cup in one swallow. "What does it want?" Dawson's eyes met mine. "What does any predator want? Food. Territory. But this one, it seems to have different hunting patterns. Some victims are killed quick. Others it plays with first.
watches, follows.
Like what?
The ones at stalks, not just hunts, they're found in the worst condition. Bodies torn apart, limbs scattered, like it's not just killing for food, but for some other instinctual drive. The rangers who found what was left of them, he shuddered. Some of them quit. Couldn't handle what they saw.
He rubbed his face, poured another draught of bourbon, and then downed it. Then he brought somber eyes to me and said,
"You should ask for another transfer."
Before I could ask what he meant, the radio crackled to life. A distress call from a hiker on the North Trail. Possible broken ankle. Dawson responded with practiced efficiency. The unnerving conversation shelved as we shifted into rescue mode. The rest of the day passed in a blur of routine tasks. The seasonal staff have arrived now, filling the station with unfamiliar voices and fresh energy. None of them know what lurks in these woods. I envy their ignorance. Dr. Chen and her research team left this afternoon. She wasn't friendly to me before she left, but she seemed concerned as she studied me. She looked tired, too. I thought it was strange that they were leaving so soon. The research was slated to continue through the week. She offered me a thumb drive, so the contents might interest me. After that, I went on patrol. The forest felt different today. The trails, once peaceful and comforting, a haven found in nature's stillness, now seemed unfamiliar and dangerous. I was aware of my surroundings, drinking in the environment to such a degree that I soon became dizzy with overwhelm. There was so much to take in, so much possibility for threat. I understood now how the fox feels at the sound of baying hounds. Near Hollow Creek, where all this began, fresh tracks marked the muddy ground. The same elongated prints, but deeper, more defined, as if whatever made them had grown heavier. They led away from the water, up the embankment toward the North Ridge. Against my better judgment, I followed them. The tracks ended at a small cave entrance hidden by undergrowth. I'd passed this spot dozens of times on patrols and never noticed it before. The opening was low, requiring an adult to crawl to enter. The darkness beyond seemed absolute, swallowing my flashlight beam. That was when I noticed the smell. Rank and musty, like wet fur and copper and something else I couldn't identify. A biological odor, primal and nauseating. The cave floor was littered with small bones and tufts of fur. A predator's den. I should have left. I should have radioed for backup. Should have marked the location and returned with a team and proper equipment. Instead, I crouched at the entrance, transfixed by a terrible curiosity. My flashlight beam caught something inside. Something that didn't belong among the animal remains. Something blue. A backpack. A child's backpack, buried under debris at the far end of the small cave. The same bright blue backpack that had been reported missing along with 10-year-old Tyler Philmont. The same bright blue backpack that had been in the photograph where he was wearing his Bucky Beaver hat. As my light passed over the backpack, I noticed scratches on the wall. Not random gouges, but deliberate, methodical marks. Dozens of them arranged in neat rows. Tallies. I backed out of the cave, my heart hammering against my ribs. Once outside, I vomited into the underbrush, the bourbon and coffee burning my throat on the way up. I radioed Dawson, my voice shaking as I reported finding Kyler's backpack. He responded with eerie calm, promising to send a search team to my coordinates. But something in his tone made me uneasy. A resignation. As if he knew what we would find, and what we wouldn't. When I returned to my cabin tonight, I plugged in Dr. Chen's thumb drive. The files were organized. Newspaper clippings, personal accounts, tribal stories, all documenting encounters with the same creature over generations. The descriptions varied, but the core details remained consistent. Pale, emaciated, moved on all fours, but sometimes reared up, hunted at night, paralyzed its prey with fear. One particular account caught my attention. A field report from Dr. Walter Hastings, wildlife biologist with the Department of Forestry, dated 1967. After 3 weeks of observing the unusual predation patterns in the Whispering Pines region, I've documented several anomalous behaviors consistent with advanced hunting strategies. The unidentified predator exhibits calculated stalking behaviors, preferring solitary targets and avoiding groups. Each successive night, it approaches closer to its selected prey, testing boundaries and responses. Most remarkable is the apparent secretion of alarm pheromones, similar to those discovered in certain insects but far more potent, that trigger an involuntary parasympathetic response in potential prey. This biochemical reaction manifests as a paralytic terror, immobilizing the victim. Test subjects exposed to residual secretions from attack sites exhibited elevated cortisol levels and temporary muscle rigidity. This represents an evolutionary hunting adaptation, undocumented in North American predators, suggesting this creature has developed specialized chemical weapons to subdue human prey. I'm sitting in my cabin now, reading through these accounts by lamplight, unwilling to turn on the overhead light that would make me visible through the windows. Outside, the forest is alive with night sounds. The chirping of crickets, the hoot of an owl. Normal sounds that make the situation more terrifying in their mundanity. I reach for my phone, thinking of calling Samantha. Ironic that after our divorce, when the silence of our empty house drove me to seek deeper isolation, I now crave the sound of another human voice, even hers. But what would I say? That the peace I sought is haunting me now? The fatigue is worse tonight. My limbs feel made of lead. My thoughts come as if I'm trying to think through mud. I've caught myself nodding off only to jerk awake with the sensation of being watched. I've barricaded the door with my desk, closed and locked all the windows, though I know that wouldn't stop it if it wanted to get in. My sidearm is loaded and within reach, though I know it won't do me any good. It's 11:43 p.m. now. Hours yet before the creature's apparent preferred time of 3:17 a.m. I'm going to try to stay awake tonight. I've made a pot of coffee and I've taken caffeine pills from the first aid kit. If it comes again, I won't be caught defenseless, paralyzed in my bed. I've left the radio on, tuned to the station frequency. The voices of the night staff doing routine check-ins provide comfort, a reminder that I'm not alone out here. Though, after what Dawson told me about buried reports, I wonder how many of them would believe me. I wonder how many would help if they knew what was happening. The exhaustion is making it hard to write. My hands keep shaking, and I'm having trouble keeping my eyes open despite the caffeine. There's a pressure behind my eyes, a dull ache that won't subside. I just realized something. The accounts in Dr. Chen's files, the ones who survived encounters with the creature, they all had one thing in common. They weren't alone. The creature seemed to avoid attacking groups, preferring isolated individuals, safety in numbers. Maybe that's why it's been so focused on me, alone in my cabin at the edge of the woods. Maybe something just hit my window. Not a scratch, a thud like a body impacting glass. I can't see anything through the blinds, but I can hear movement outside, something circling the cabin. I've turned off the lamp. I'm writing by the light of the laptop screen, huddled in the corner farthest from any window or door. The radio has gone silent. Nothing but static now. I don't know if it's a technical problem or if something has happened to the night staff at the station. The thuds have stopped. Now there's just scratching again. Gentle, tentative, like it's sending a message. I know you're in there. I can wait. I won't make it until morning like this. I need to get to the station, to other people. The ranger cabin clusters are only half a mile away. If I run, I might make it. I'm gonna try. If I don't write another entry, tell Dawson he was right. Tell him that... Wait. The scratching stopped. There's silence now. Complete silence. Even the forest has gone quiet. I think it's found a way in. June 17th, 2024. It's been 3 days since my last entry. 3 days since I ran from my cabin into the night. I'm writing this from a hospital bed in Riverton, 40 miles from Whispering Pines. The doctors say I'm lucky to be alive. I don't feel lucky. I can still feel its breath on the back of my neck, still hear the strange, wet sound of its movement through the undergrowth as it pursued me through the forest, still smell that distinctive odor, metallic and decaying like old pennies and rotting meat mingled with something else, something I can't identify but my brainstem recognizes as predator. I don't remember much of the escape. Fragments come back in flashes, disjointed and dreamlike, breaking through my cabin window when I realized it was in the crawl space beneath the floor. The impact of gravel on my knees as I hit the ground. The forest impossibly dark even with my flashlight. Tree branches whipping my face. The sound of something moving through the woods behind me. Not on the trail, but parallel to it, keeping pace with no effort. I remember reaching the main road and a truck. Dawson's truck, screeching to a halt beside me. Dawson pulled me inside, his face grim in the dashboard light.
"Don't look back,"
he kept saying as he floored the accelerator.
"Whatever you do, don't look back."
I looked back. In the red wash of taillights, it stood revealed, skeletal but wrong, as if a man had been boiled down to tendon and hatred. Its mouth hung slack, not in hunger, in anticipation. The doctors diagnosed me with severe dehydration, exhaustion, and something they're calling acute stress reaction. They found multiple shallow lacerations across my back, 4 parallel lines, spaced even. I told them I'd been attacked by a mountain lion. They didn't believe me, but they didn't press for the truth either. Dawson visited yesterday. Brought me some clothes, my phone, my notebook. He looked haggard, the lines in his face deeper than I remembered.
Tyler Philmont's backpack is gone, he said without preamble. Search team found the cave. The backpack is missing, but the tallies are still there. Scratched into the stone, just like you said.
I wanted to accuse him of covering it up again, of making evidence disappear, but the exhaustion in his eyes stopped me. He wasn't lying.
Creature moves its cache, he explained in a low voice. Park Service documented it before, back in the 80s. Changes dens when it feels threatened, like it knows. Not intelligence. Instinct. The way bears will abandon a fishing spot if humans appear too often. Pure survival adaptation.
Dawson stayed quiet for a while. Then,
I found something else. In the archives, a report from 1954.
He pulled out a folded piece of paper, creased and yellowed with age, a photocopy of a typewritten document.
This ranger, Matheson, tracked the creature for weeks, studied its habits, found its primary den. He tried to kill it. It didn't go well for him.
I read the report. Standard field documentation until the final paragraph, which detailed Matheson's attempt to eliminate what he called the predator. He'd brought rifles, traps, even improvised flamethrowers. None of it worked. The report ended mid-sentence. What happened to him? Dawson's expression was bleak.
They found pieces of him scattered across 3 miles of forest. The official report blamed a bear attack.
He took the paper back, folded it with care.
Cooper, this thing, it's been here longer than the park. Longer than the towns. Maybe longer than the people. It's part of these mountains. You can't kill it any more than you can kill the forest itself.
When Dawson left, he pressed something into my hand. A small silver pendant on a leather cord. Simple design. 4 parallel lines crossed by a 5th.
Local thing, he muttered, not meeting my eyes. Tradition. Old timers around here wear them. Supposed to mask your scent or something. Bullshit, but...
He shrugged.
Can't hurt.
The doctors say I can leave tomorrow. Dawson's arranged for a transfer effective right now. Glacier National Park in Montana, as far from Whispering Pines as the Park Service can send me. I should be relieved, should be grateful for the escape, but I can't stop thinking about those tracks by Hollow Creek. About the paralytic fear that gripped me each night at 3:17 a.m. About Tyler Philmont's blue backpack in that cave. About what Dr. Hastings wrote regarding the pheromones. Last night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. Hospital machines beeping in the background. The nurse checking vitals in the bed over. For a moment, I felt that same weight in my chest, that same immobility. Then it passed, leaving the cold sweat of terror behind. Outside, on my window, 3 stories up, something scratched against the glass. Gentle, almost tentative. When I looked, there was nothing there. Just a reflection of the hospital room in the darkness. Just my own face, haggard and pale, eyes wide with fear, but I know what I heard. I'm taking the transfer. I'm going to Glacier. I'm going to try to forget Whispering Pines, forget what hunts in those woods, but deep down, I know the truth. It found me once. It can find me again. July 19th, 2024. It's been a month since my transfer to Glacier. The mountains here are different, taller, more imposing, their peaks crowned with snow even in July. Glacial lakes reflect the sky like polished mirrors. Everything is vast and ancient and beautiful. I should feel safe here. I don't. During my orientation, I smiled and nodded as the senior ranger explained protocols and procedures. I filled out paperwork, memorized radio codes, learned the trails. I did everything right. I'm the model transfer, competent, experienced, eager to start fresh. No one knows why I left Whispering Pines. No one asked. At night, I still wake up at 3:17 a.m. Every night without fail. My body has internalized the fear response like a soldier who jumps at car backfires years after returning from war. The doctors call it PTSD. They've prescribed medication that's supposed to help me sleep. It doesn't. Nothing does. There were no instincts left. No shields to raise. I lay there, hollowed out by fear so deep it felt like my bones had cracked under its weight. I understood what it meant to be prey. Not terrified, just waiting for the inevitable. The pendant Dawson gave me hangs around my neck day and night. I tell myself it's ridiculous, a token with no real power, but I can't bring myself to take it off. At night, it warms against my skin as if absorbing my body heat. Sometimes it feels like it's pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. A psychological effect, nothing more. But still. Yesterday, I was doing routine trail maintenance on the eastern slope. Fatigue hollowed me out until there was nothing left to guard. I walked the trails like a man, half dreaming, seeing shapes shift in the trees that disappeared when I blinked. Even in sunlight, the world had grown too heavy to carry. That's when I found the tracks. They were hidden by pine needles, easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. But I was looking. I'm always looking now. Elongated, too long for a human. Toe marks splayed and tapered. 4 distinct claw impressions at the end of each print. The familiar copper taste of fear flooded my mouth. My heart slammed against my ribs as I backed away, radio in hand to call for backup. Then I stopped. Forced myself to look closer, to examine what I was seeing. Mountain lion tracks, common in this area. The elongation was due to the animal slipping in the soft earth. The claws were just where the pine needles had fallen into the impression. Nothing unusual. Nothing supernatural. Just a predator going about its business. I laughed then, a high, thin sound that echoed through the trees. Relief, I told myself. Just relief. But something didn't add up. The rangers here say mountain lions are rare, even more rare to track. Ghost cats, they call them. Yet I found tracks 3 times this week on trails I'm patrolling. All fresh. I haven't told anyone about Whispering Pines, about what hunted me there. But rumors travel in the Park Service. Whispers follow me through the station. I've caught my new colleagues exchanging glances when they think I'm not looking. A few have asked about the scars on my back. 4 parallel lines that still haven't healed. I tell them I was in a climbing accident. They don't believe me, but they don't press. My cabin here is different. Larger, newer, reinforced windows with a steel door, modern amenities, a landline phone that works. I've added my own security measures. Motion sensor lights around the perimeter, extra locks, an axe by my bed. I know these precautions mean nothing against what hunted me in Whispering Pines, but they help me sleep. A little. Dawson calls me once a week to check up. Our conversations are brief, professional. We talk about weather patterns, tourist numbers, routine ranger business. We never mentioned what happened, what's still happening. But before hanging up, he asks the same question.
Any unusual wildlife sightings?
I always say no. I think he knows I'm lying. Last night was the worst yet. I dreamed of Hollow Creek again, of those tallies scratched into the cave wall. In the dream, I counted them, 57 marks arranged in neat columns. And as I watched, an invisible claw etched a 58th line into the stone. I awoke at 3:17 a.m., drenched in sweat despite the mountain chill. The darkness in my cabin felt thick, oppressive. For a moment, I was back in Whispering Pines, paralyzed with that primal fear as something watched me from the shadows. Then I heard it. Not from inside the cabin. From outside. From the forest beyond my window. I didn't look. Couldn't look. Just lay there, rigid as the sound continued. Methodical, the slow scrape of claws against wood, then silence. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was just a branch against the siding. Wind in the eaves. Normal forest sounds misinterpreted by a mind primed for fear. Until I stepped outside and saw the marks on my cabin's exterior wall. 4 parallel lines gouged deep into the wooden siding. The fresh cuts stood out stark and pale against the weathered timber, splinters still hanging from the edges of the grooves. I should report this. Should show my supervisor, file the appropriate forms, request an investigation. Instead, I've said nothing. Done nothing. Because I know what they'll think, what they'll say, that I'm cracking up, that I brought my nightmares with me from Whispering Pines, that I'm seeing monsters that don't exist. Or worse, they'll say that I made the marks myself. And maybe I did. Maybe I sleepwalked outside and clawed at my own cabin wall, some twisted manifestation of trauma and guilt. Maybe there are no mountain lion tracks following me on patrol. Maybe I'm losing my grip on reality, piece by piece. But I don't think so. I think it followed me, tracked me across 600 miles of wilderness to this new territory. No, not new territory. I am its territory. The cabin, the mountains, the new park, none of that matters. It's marked me as its hunting ground. I think it's been watching me, studying my routines, learning my behaviors. I think it's been waiting, and I think tonight at 3:17 a.m. it will come for me again. I've barricaded myself in the bathroom, the only room without windows. The sound of the bathroom door wasn't scratching. It was breathing. Heavy, wet exhalations against the wood, punctuated by the faint squeal of something sharp twisting into the frame. The door seemed to flex with the pressure. The axe is beside me. My phone is charged. I've called Dawson, left a message explaining everything. He will understand. He will tell them where to look for my body, for what's left of it. This will be my final entry. If by miracle I survive until morning, I'm leaving. Not just Glacier, not just the Park Service. I'm leaving everything behind. Changing my name. Moving somewhere with no forests, no mountains, no dark places for it to hide. A desert, maybe, or a city, a big one with crowds and noise and lights that burn 24/7. But even as I write these words, I know the truth. There is no escape. There never was. It's found me once. It will find me again, and again, and again, until... Wait. Something scratching at the bathroom door.
Thank you for sharing my nightmares and helping me carry the grief. If you enjoyed the show, please share your favorite nightmare with a friend or family member. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments below. You can also support my work by joining my Patreon. You'll get early access to episodes and exclusive insights into each story. You can also buy my books on Amazon. Thank you again for sharing this time with me. Good night.